actually starting this year Parshas bereishis, which in all of the many years this year has been going on, exactly 2. We never started Shabbos bereishis because Shabbos bereishis is usually so close to Yom Tov. It's still so close to Yom Tov, but we got a little daring apparently. That we usually we started either Noach, and actually I believe 2 years ago we started Lech Lecha. So this is the first time we have an opportunity to talk about Parshas bereishis. There's an expression from one of the Chabad Rabbeim that wie mir stellt sich weg Shabbos bereishis azoi geht im ganzen Jahr. The way you establish oneself Shabbos bereishis, that's how the whole year is going to go. I think I'm going to have to hold this mic for an hour. This is not a very good way the year should go. Yeah, well, what? That quote, it's written in many places, you have to just find them. It's a quote from the Tzemach Tzedek, from the third Chabad Rebbe, and it's been published in many different talks from the Lubavitcher Rebbeim. The meaning of this quotation is the following: the Yomim Tovim are special, right? That's what they teach you. The word Moyed. Moyed means a distinct time. Moyed L'Simcha, an unusual time. And Yom Tov is wonderful. Yom Tov is important. The problem sometimes can be that because Yom Tov is special, when we return to the ordinary, we forget Yom Tov. Right? I've illustrated this on many occasions in the past, that the design of Yiddishkeit, as Hashem gave it to us, consists of Tmidin Kisidron Musafim Kilchasam. Tmidin Kisidron means the same thing repeatedly. The steady Avodas Hashem that a Yid does day to day. On a regular basis, we serve Hashem in a fashion that's called Tamid, constant and tadir, orderly, regular. On the other hand, you have Musafim Ki Hilchasa. Musafim means the things that are added, that are extraordinary. That's what the word Musaf means. Like the word Taisfis or Hisafa, to increase and to add. And although Musafim Ki Hilchasa are very important, the Musaf, the additional ideas that we add to our Avodas Hashem are very important. As I've explained on the previous occasion also, Ki Hilchasan, what does the word Ki Hilchasan mean? Like the halacha is. But the word Ki Hilchasan is from the same word as a halicha, as mahalich. Musafim Ki Hilchasan, what makes a Yid go forward, what makes a Yid walk and move forward and make changes, is not the regular pattern of life, but the musaf, the things that we take on that are special, that are additional. So Yom Tov, relative to the regular grind of life, is called Musafim Ki Hilchasam versus Tmidin Kisidra. In other words, what we do in our day-to-day and a week-by-week and a month-by-month basis in terms of being Yidden, that's the regular Yiddishkeit, Tadir, Tamid. And Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Torah, and then of course Chanukah, Purim, Pesach, Shavuos, that's called Musaf, it's called special. And there's something very special about what's special, right? That doesn't have to be explained. And if it does, then it's inexplicable. The problem, as I mentioned, is that sometimes Yom Tov passes, and precisely because Yom Tov is special and distinct and different, Yom Tov is over and Yom Tov is gone. And there's no carryover. So therefore the first Shabbos after Yom Tov, which is for the most part an ordinary Shabbos. Shabbos bereishis is a Shabbos like any other. We read the first Parsha in the Torah, and we do the regular things that we do on this Shabbos. Especially this year that Simchas Torah was on Sunday, rather than, I don't know, what other day Simchas Torah could be, a Friday, whatever it is. We have almost a complete week of regular Avodas Hashem that involves, dodging the rain and taking down the schach and recovering from the muscle aches of Yom Tov. But at the same time also there's the regular Avodas Hashem. There's a story they say about the Baditcheves, I believe, by Chassidim. You don't wear tefillin on Chol Hamoed. So Nebuch, for 9 days he didn't wear tefillin. So when it came Yisrachag, he got up Fatog. As soon as the sun came up, he ran and he grabbed this tefillin and wanted to put on his tefillin because he hadn't worn tefillin in 9 days. So after Yom Tov, you right away return to the regular grind. So Shabbos bereishis, which is the first Shabbos after the special time of Yom Tov, is critical. And that's why the expression is V'mishtal tzchavek Shabbos bereishis. As Shabbos bereishis goes, will determine how the whole year goes. And the criteria is this: do we schlep? Are we guided? Do we carry over the experience of Yom Tov, the inspiration, the fire, the passion that we, so to speak, received and experienced in Elul and Aslichis and Rosh Hashanah and Simei Tshuva and Yom Kippur and the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and then Sukkot and the Dalad Minim and The Simcha of Sukkot and then Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah, does it carry over? And it's determined in the first Shabbos. You see how the first Shabbos goes. If the first Shabbos is like Yom Tov Dikir, you see that this is a Yid who's coming from a Musafir, from a special time, then the whole year will be how it's supposed to be. On the other hand, if the first Shabbos is a Havacha Dikir, is an ordinary Shabbos, then there's a problem. It's almost like as if Yom Tov was wonderful, but it was too wonderful, and as a result, there's no carryover. It doesn't spill over into our daily lives. And of course, it's very important to understand, and this is an idea that's been addressed many times in this class, in a lot of detail, that the whole purpose of Yom Tov is not that for 1 or 2 days, or even for a whole month, we should all feel holy and close to the Eibishter, but rather that this special time and this special experience should be niked, it should be evident in the life and times, Navoida Vayid, until the next Yom Tov. Yom Tov it's not enough to have Yom Tov for Yom Tov. You have Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah we accept Hashem as our King, and on Tshuva we do, on Yom Kippur we do Tshuva, and on Simcha, Sukkot, the two emphases are Achdus Yisrael and Simcha. And Simchas Torah is the Simcha of the Torah. It's not that we're accepting Hashem as a King Rosh Hashanah. We're accepting Hashem Rosh Hashanah that He should be our King a whole year. We're doing Tshuva Yom Kippur, that the Tshuva should be a whole year, Kol Yom of B'Tshuva. And the same is true with each Yom Tov. And that's why Shabbos bereishis is an important Shabbos. We want that in Shabbos bereishis we should see that we're coming from Yom Tov. And then in Mitzvah Hashem, Parshas we'll also see that we're coming from Yom Tov. That's the way it goes. So in a certain respect, we're still in the spirit of Yom Tov. And we want to be guided. We want to drag along. You want to continue that ball rolling. All the power, the koyach, the holiness, the simcha and the chayas, all the good energies of Yom Tov should continue on for Kol Hashana Kula, for the whole year. And this is how we maximize, this is how we utilize the Yom Tov to its fullest. And that's really, like I said, from an Avodah Hashem point of view, what Yom Tov is for. Not only for the sake of Yom Tov, but the hemshech, how Yom Tov continues on. But in any event, this is Shabbos bereishis. This is the first Shabbos of the year. We start the Torah again. And of course, there's the simcha of the Torah. Just like there's a simcha in finishing the Torah, there's a simcha in beginning the Torah. And this week, we read Parshas bereishis. For speech givers, Parshas bereishis, as they say, is a gold mine. There's no shortage of what to talk about. And every speech giver will find what he likes. Those people who like to say nice things about people will find nice things from Parshas bereishis. Those people to find critical things about people, there's plenty of critical stuff in Parshas bereishis. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi points it out on quite a few occasions. It's a chock full of drushes. Parshas bereishis is full of drushes. No shortage. The problem with Parshas bereishis is there's no time to prepare the drushes. Usually. Like I said, this year it's an exception. But the Ruba, quite often, Shabbos bereishis is Simchas Torah is Friday. When you prepare the drush of Shabbos bereishis, come get ready the drushes for Yom Tov, and it's Shabbos already for the darshanim. I'm fortunately not a darshan. Fortunately for me, at least, not a darshan. But in any event, but Shabbos bereishis, nobody has a problem with preparing a drush. You have Kain and Hevel, you have Eitz Das, you have creation, you have Shabbos, right? Lahavdil, you have the union of Az Uchal, Huchal Likre B'Shem Hashem, the whole Avodah Zarah process, and then the 10 generations, and it's full, right? And as we know, Parshas bereishis encompasses a time span of about 1,500 years, a little bit more, 1,500 years. No Parsha in Torah comes close to that in terms of the amount of time that it encompasses. Parshas Noach is second, and Parshas Noach encompasses Viful, a few hundred years. I don't know exactly how many. And Avraham Avinu was born in 1948. Not 1948 after World War II. 1948 of the second millennium. And the Mabul happened exactly 300 years before. 1648, Kimdamani, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. So the Parshas Noach encompasses about 300 years, from the Mabul till the birth of Avraham Avinu. And then after that, it slows down, right? You have the Parsha of the Ovis. The whole Sefer bereishis encompasses from Avraham Avinu until Yankov Avinu is less than 400 years. They came out of Mitzrayim. 500 years after the birth of Avraham Avinu, they came out of Mitzrayim. And the rest of the Chumash is in Ganzen 40 years. From Yetzias Mitzrayim until Moshe Rabbeinu is passing away is 40 years. So Parshas bereishis encompasses a lot of time. And like I said, no darshan is ever lost for words in Parshas bereishis. Here's what we're going to talk about. Mit Nebish's Hilf. And of course, see, every year that I speak here, I have a problem. I'm not allowed to repeat myself, God forbid, even though I do it. But at least officially, I'm not repeating myself, because if I do, someone's going to say, you said that already? I'm not allowed to say the same thing twice, even though in Judaism, you should know repetition, chazara, is very critical. But in any event, you have to always find new things, new ways of approaching the Chumash. And a part which is very critical, and honestly, sometimes I neglect this, is what's the relevance? It's a very nice Torah. What does it have to do with me and my life? And that's very, very important in Avodas Hashem. And the ladies are especially that way. And ladies want to know, so what does it have to do with me? Tell me how it's going to affect my life and my mindset, my thought process, or my behavior, whatever it is. So we'll have to figure out what we'll do this year. But here's what we're going to talk about today. The beginning of Parshas bereishis, of course, is the story of how Hashem created the world. We all learned it in the second grade, right? That's when you learned it. The first grade, the second grade. Bereishis an Anfang, Barat Barshafen, Elikim der Eibishter. And for many of us, nobody knows what an Anfang means. Nobody knows what Eibishter is. Eibishter is Barshafen, huh? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not up to date. Whatever the case is, we all learn bereishis bara Elokim es Hashemayim v'Haaretz, and we read the story of creation. And it's a very simple story. I have a daughter who's 3 years old, and she's in nursery, and she's going to come home at Shabbos with an arts and crafts. She's going to have a picture of what was created on Sunday, and what was created on Monday, and what was created on Tuesday. And you know what? You read the whole Pasha, and it tells us how Hashem created the world, and guess what? None of us have a clue how Hashem created the world. But we have no idea whatsoever how Hashem created the world. Why? Because we have no concept of creation. We can't understand what creation means. You know why we can't understand what creation means? Because we can't do it. There's a very basic principle in reality that's something you can't relate to, you can't understand. We read how Hashem created the world, and on Sunday He did this, and on Monday He did this, and on Tuesday He did this. And like it says in the Mishnah, Hashem had to speak 10 times to create the world. And we all learn it, and we understand it. Very interesting, very nice. But if we thought about it, we realize we don't understand at all. And this is, of course, what a Yid is. A Yid is a Maimin, a believer. There are things, Taka, we can't understand. We can't understand them because they're higher than our understanding. And on the top of the list of things that we cannot understand is the whole idea of B'riyah, that Hashem created. First there was nothing, except of course for Hashem. And then there was a world. How much time did it take for the world to go from being nothing to being something? It didn't take any time at all. As soon as Hashem wanted, it was. As soon as Hashem spoke, as the Lashon and the Chumash is, it happened. So we learn it, we understand it, and some of us say drushes on it. But to be very honest, we don't understand. And I think it's the beginning of understanding is the recognition that we really don't understand what it means that the Rebbe created the world. So here's a very interesting irony in light of what I just said. There's a Zohar, and the Zohar says that there were 2 parallel sets of 10. There are twice in the Torah, I'm sure there's more than twice, but 2 times especially, the number 10 represented. What are they? The 10 utterances with which Hashem created the world, of course, and the 10 dibris, 10 commandments with which Hashem gave us the Torah. And as I've illustrated on many other occasions, it says in Sfarim, I believe it's in the Sag, that in the Aseres HaDibris there are Taf, Reish, Yud, Gimel, Oisius, 613 letters. And the last 2 words of the Aseres HaDibris, if you can remember, are Asher Lireyecha. Asher is Aleph, Shin, Reish, that's 3 letters. And Lireyecha is 4 letters. 3 and 4 is 7. And with the 2 words, Asher Lireyecha, to your fellow, you have 620 letters, which amounts to the 613 mitzvahs min Torah and the 7 mitzvahs Rabbanan. So in the Aseres HaDibris, you don't only have the 10 commandments, as the world calls it, but you have actually the whole Torah. So you have the 10 commandments, the 10 utterances of creation, the Asara Ma'amaras with which Hashem created the world. And in these 31 psukim, you have everything, right? In those 31 psukim, everything is represented. All the different species of animals, and the whole massive universe with all the stars and the galaxies, and the time, space, the massiveness, the expanse of time and space, which is absolutely boggling to the mind. It's dizzying if you think about how massive and how intricate and how involved and how perfect the creation that Hashem Yisbarach made. It's all represented in the 31 psukim in the Torah. So the few words Hashem said, and so many different things came from it. How from a few psukim a whole bunch of stuff came, that's a discussion unto itself. You're welcome to look it up at home. And I wish you a lot of luck. In the Shad Yichud V'Emunah, in the second section of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe discusses this. I just want to make one point, that it says in Siddur, Morabu Masecha Hashem, and Ma Godlu Masech Hashem. It's actually a pasuk in Tehillim, but we say it in Siddur. Right? Morabu Masech Hashem. What does Morabu mean? How many, how diverse, how many different types of creations do you have, Hashem? And the second thing is Ma Godlu. What is the word Ma Godlu? How great, how massive, how large are your creations? So it says in Sfarim that the statement Morabu Masech Hashem, how various, how many different types of creations Hashem Yisbarach made, is an allusion, as refers to the earth. Because only in this world is there life, at least a sophisticated life, involved life, and such a diversity of different creations, so many different types of nivroim, anashir, so many different types of animals and plants and so on and so forth, and lahandl people, different types of people. How many different types of people are there? As many as there are different people. Like it says in Chazal, in the same Shabbos, no two people have the same mind. The idea that the creations of Hashem are great is an allusion, is a reference to the Tzvah HaShamayim, to the heavenly host. Right? The bodies of the heaven are very, very large. Right? They're massive, but they're simple. There's not a lot of intricacy in the heavens. And over there, the emphasis in the godless, in the greatness of Hashem. But in any event, in the 31 psukim of the Torah is represented the Marabu and the Magodlu, all the diversity and all of the size, the massiveness of God's creation is all represented in these few psukim. So here's the Zohar. The Zohar says that there's Asara, Kaf, the two sets of 10, the 10 Dibris versus the 10 Ma'amaris. Comes again the Zohar and says something which is fascinating if you understand how much we don't understand what creation is. The Zohar says that the Asara Ma'amaris, that the 10 utterances of creation are called Milin de Hedyote. Milin de Hedyote means the words of a Hedyot that are ordinary, plain, simple. The commandments of the Torah, this is love, this is not ordinary, this is holy, this is special. The 10 utterances which Hashem created the world are called ordinary. Poshet ereid, milan de'adyeta. In the language of halacha, it would be called sfas chulin, ordinary, not kodesh, and not Torah, but chulin. Simple words, poshet words. And the Zohar adds a few more words. The lav orchoi de malka leishtoi b'milan de'adyeta. It is not a minhag, the custom of a melech, of a king, leishtoi, to be involved b'milan de'adyeta in ordinary words. The psukim in the Torah with which Hashem Yisbarach created the world. And like we said before, we have no concept of what Bria means, what creation is. Like I said, we all learned the Chumash and we touched the Chumash. And we all understand. You know what we understand? Because nobody asks any kashas. There's nothing to understand. How Hashem creates from nothing, and it says you should know in Mishnah they're not even allowed to ask. So we have no concept of what it means that Eibishter created the world. Yeah? It says the Zohar, that's called Mil Poshet Erei. This is simple language. And the Zohar says it's not the derech of a melech tzeret and Poshet Erei. A king, and the Eibishter of course is called Melech Malchei Amlochim. Is Lav Orcha de Malka. It's not the way of a king to be involved in simple words. The words in the Torah with which Hashem created the whole world, the Torah calls Hedyot, Poshet. The first message, the first insight that we learn, the first lesson, if you will, that we learn from this Zohar is to understand how holy the Torah is and to understand how holy a mitzvah is. The Zohar says that the word with which Hashem created the world, and we can all agree that they're powerful words, right? How powerful are these words, these Eishes HaTorah that Hashem created the world? They're powerful enough to create a world, and none of us can do that, right? There's a medrash which is brought to us for him. The medrash says, and I've quoted this medrash before, the medrash says, Im yiskansun kol boi olam. If all of humankind, all the people in the world would gather together, lo yuchlu livrei knaf yitush echad. They wouldn't be able to create the wing of a single mosquito, or lahachnas bein neshama, and to give it life. It's not metrish. If Wisconsin coal boy, all humankind would get together. In other words, and invest their collective intelligence, they wouldn't be able to create the wing of one mosquito, a yitush, and lahachnas bein neshama, to give it life. Only the Rebbe creates life. So Hastis, we have no concept of what creation is, and the Zayah says that the psukim that had the koyach, the, so to speak, the formula of Imazot, of creation is called Hed, it's Poshet, it's Prosterade, it's simple words, Divrei Chulin, and it's Lav Orcha de Malk, it's not the derech of a melech to speak Divrei Chel, to speak ordinary words. So, it's like Kasha, how could you call the Sodom HaMoris Hedyet? But one thing is for sure, if the Sodom HaMoris, if the 10 utterances of creation are called ordinary, and of course the Aseres HaDibreis are special, so think what a mitzvah is. When Yid opens up a Chumash or a Mishnah or a Gemara or a Shulchan Aruch and learns a little Torah, and this is not Hedyet, this is called Hektish, this is called holy. So think about the preciousness, think about the holiness, the value, the worth of a mitzvah or a word of Torah. If the koyach of the Hashem that created the whole world is called Hedyet, and every single mitzvah we do, one mitzvah, not a bunch of mitzvahs, Hashem kiddishanu b'mitzvahs, Hashem makes us kodesh, holy with his mitzvahs, is not considered Hedyet for the Meibish. And this is true. It's hard to understand, but Yid never, even though we're called Am Chacham and Noven, a wise and an intelligent people, our Yiddishkeit is not determined at all by was man versteht jetzt and was man versteht nicht, whether we understand or not. So we have a munah, we believe and we accept that one mitzvah is shaveh, is more significant, more meaningful, has more koyach, has more power than the power of creation itself. Because this is called Hedyet, this is called ordinary, as powerful as it is, and this is called Kodesh, this is called Hekdesh, this is called holy. So the first lesson is to appreciate what a Yid is able to do when he performs a mitzvah, when he learns Torah, and so on and so forth. And while I'm along these lines, I'll share some thoughts. Balabatasha thoughts. This is everyday thoughts. We all know, it says in Chumash, and it's brought in Sfarim, that Zeh Keli Vanvehu. Zeh Keli Vanvehu means what? Zeh Keli, this is my God, this is my Kale, my Eibishter. Vanvehu, what's that Vanvehu? And I'm going to make him beautiful. And as a result, we know that there's an inyan of Hidur mitzvah, to do mitzvahs beautifully, right? Just like we all like to have a nice house and a nice car and beautiful clothing, v'chulu, and beautiful children. We also have to have Zeh Keli Vanvehu. But we need to remember is the house and the car and the clothing, talazach, and this is called Hedyet. This is ordinary. And Torah mitzvah is hektish. And if we want our divrei choil, our ordinary things, to be noveh, like the lashon you have in Shira Shirim again and again, beautiful, how much more so we want things that are taka kodesh, that are holy, to be noveh. The fact is that some of us are preoccupied with making our divrei choil noveh, and the divrei kodesh gets neglected. It's not because we don't care. It's because the investment is different. When you want to have a nice house, what do you have to invest? Geld, money. You either got it or you don't, right? In America, you borrow the money, and you either pay it back or you don't. And you make a settlement with the bank. But the investment is what they call in the language of Seichel, achitzeni izdike. You work, you earn money. If you have the money, you pay and you get it done. You don't have to build a house yourself and lay the carpet yourself and put the wallpaper up yourself. And even if you did, you're using your hands, you get kapecha. And if you wanted to make yourself a beautiful home, but you weren't going to hire a contractor and a builder and a supplier, you're going to do it all yourself, you'd think 50 times, not 50 times, 50,000 times before you did it. It's a whole different investment. The Zeh Keli Vanvehu of Torah mitzvahs geht nicht in Geld. You can't pay for it. You can't pay for it. I have a brother who's a shliach, so he once said this in front of a group of people. I found it very interesting. He says a rich man came to heaven after he died, and he wanted to get into Gan Eden. So they told him, as cost, there's a price. How much is it? I'm a rich man. I'll give you whatever you want. He says, and so many millions of dollars. So he pulls out his checkbook and he's writing a check. He says, no. Over here we take only receipts. It's a different kind of investment. You can't pay for mitzvahs mit Geld. And if you pay with mitzvahs mit Geld, it's achiteni izdike mitzvah. The Zeh Keli Vanvehu of Torah mitzvahs is neshama. And neshama is hard. Neshama is emes. And there's no room for bluff, right? You and the Eibishter, who are you going to fool? He knows the truth and you know the truth. If everything gets denied. And that's why the Zekeli Vanveyu, about Divrei Kodesh, about holy things, is oftentimes more difficult and challenging than the Anveyu of the house and the car and the clothing, because this is a Ninyan Chitzoni and this is a Ninyan Pnimi. The beauty is external and the investment is external. And this is a true thing, and the beauty of a mitzvah is my involvement in the mitzvah. If you don't mind me saying this, you can spend $50 on an esrog, you can spend $500 on an esrog. The beauty of the esrog is not only how much you spent on it, it's the yakrus of the esrog, it's how much you appreciate the esrog, and the kavanah that you invest in the esrog, and so on and so forth. And it's a much more difficult investment when the investment is not money, but as they say in Yiddish, blut and schweiß, blood and sweat. But when it's harder, it's easy. We all say it every day in davening, and you shouldn't skip it when you say as Yashid. This is my God. This is the Rebbe Shavavei. I want to make him beautiful. And when I do a mitzvah and I appreciate that the whole world, and for sure my house or my apartment, is called Hedyot. The koyach of the Rebbe to make the whole creation is called a Hedyot, ordinary, and each mitzvah is called Hekdesh, heilig, holy. So the quality of the nova, of the beauty that we want to invest in a mitzvah and in Torah and in Bechlal, in Yiddishkeit, has to obviously be on a much, much greater level. Notwithstanding the fact that we'll all concede that it's a lot more difficult to invest yourself than to invest your money. But in any event, there's a kasha. And this kasha everybody asks, beginning of course with Rashi. But we're going to say it a little bit differently. He says a little bit differently than Rashi approaches it. The kasha is, since the Zohar says that the Asarim Amoris, that the 10 utterances of creation are Hedyot, are ordinary, and then the Zohar adds, it's not a oirech, it's not a derech, it's not a minhag of a king to be involved in middle of the Hedyot in ordinary things. The kasha is, why is the story of creation in the Torah in the first place? Like Rashi says, and this is the direct quote from Rashi, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Amar Rav Yitzchak, and it says in Sfarim that the reason that Rashi begins with Amar Rav Yitzchak, because Rashi had a close relative whose name was Rav Yitzchak. Do you know who? His father, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. That's what the Rashi stands for. So the Remes, he was merames to his father. That he says all of his Torah is b'schus his father. Everybody knows the story. It's brought to say that Rashi was born because of the Mesiras Nefesh of Rabbi. Right? You know the story. You know the story. That Rabbi Yitzchak had a very, very precious stone. How he got it, I don't know. And he was traveling on a boat, he was going to sell it. And some goyim who were involved in the church found out that he had this very precious stone, and they wanted it for the base tifla, for David Zara. And he couldn't say no. Because if he would say no, it would appear as an inyan from Heder HaKavod to their tiflos, to their shtus, to their Avodah Zarah. And you understand in those days what that would mean. But he didn't want to give it to them, so he made believe he stumbled and he threw it into the water. And he lost it. It was a Ashidus. He could have been very wealthy. So there was a voice came from the heaven and said that B'schar zes Mesiras Nefesh, he will have a son that'll be Meir Ein Eim Shel Yisrael, that will illuminate the eyes of Yidden in Torah, and this was Rashi's father. So Rashi's Torah, like it says about Rabbi Akiva, Shalivish Alachem Shalah, Rashi's Torah was B'schus his father's Mesiras Nefesh. So he begins his Pirush on Chumash, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, my father, Rabbi Yitzchak, he says, Rabbi Yitzchak is a medrash, but he's a merames to his father, the following. What's the remez? What's the question? The Torah should begin in the middle of Parshas Boy. You shouldn't have bereishis and Noach and Lech Lecha and Vayera and Chaysara and even Shmeis and Vayera. Just start in the middle of Parshas Boy. Why? Parshas. Because Torah is not in the business of telling stories, and it's not in the business of recording history, and it's not in the business of providing a timeline. It's in the business of Torah. And what's the business of Torah? Telling us how to serve Hashem Yisbarach, how to do His mitzvahs, and to give Him a nachas ruach, and to fulfill kavanasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what the Eibishter wants out of the creation. So Rashi, the first Rashi in Chumash says, why do we need all this? Rashi doesn't only ask the kasha about creation, he asks the kasha about Adam's life and Noach's life and the Mabel and the Haflog and Avraham, Yitzchak and Yankiv and the Shvatim, and even Golus Mitzrayim and Yitzias Mitzrayim. We don't need any of this. Why does the Torah tell us all of these things? Torah is Torah, and as we've said many times, and you're probably going to hear it a lot more times, the word Torah is like you have in Parshas Zeh Sabrocha, from which we're coming. Yoiru mishpatecha has to teach us something, and not teach us something that's of historical relevance. Teach us something that's negay in our lives. Negay means it touches our lives now. So the question is, all of these stories that happened with big tzaddikim, was hat es mit mein Leben? How does it speak to me, and what does that do with my life? So Rashi asks the question in a very broad way. We're going to speak specifically about the first Parsha Chumash. Why does the Torah tell us the story of how Hashem created the world? Besides for the fact that we don't begin to understand it, and that's really the truth. I mean, that's a God emes. Look in the Sfar, look in the Mefarshim on the first few psukim of Chumash, the first 31 psukim of Chumash. You'll see how little me versteht. You're talking about the Gedeli Arishenim, and then in Pnimis HaTorah. Nobody, what it means that Hashem created is not something that we can say we understand. We believe it because it's true, but to verstehen, it's not comprehensible. The whole concept of creation can't be understood, like I said at the very outset, because you can't understand something you can't relate to. And none of us can create the wing of a mosquito, let alone a world that's Morabu Magodlu. And as a result, the Parsha bereishis that speaks about creation, first of all, we don't understand it. And Vashenis, Torah calls it hedyet, prost. You know, in Russian, when we say in Yiddish or in English prost, it has a connotation that's negative. In Russian, which is the prost is a Russian word, prost doesn't mean negative. It just means plain. Like chulin, the opposite of holy is not contaminated. It's ordinary. Chulin, choil, doesn't mean bad. It means plain. Hedyet means prost. A koyin hedyet is a bad koyin. A koyin hedyet means a prost koyin, an ordinary koyin. But ordinary words don't belong in a book which is Chachmasei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the holy wisdom of Hashem Yisbarach. So why does the Eibishter tell us the story of the Asar Mamoros and their answers to these kashas? I can't tell you how many. Just as it's impossible to understand, that's how many answers there are. There's so many answers to the kasha, including the text that Rashi brings. Rashi says, why matzah and pasach bereishis? Why does Hashem begin the world with bereishis? Mishum koyach ma'asav higid liyamei. Because he wanted to inform Amei, his people, Yidden, Klal Yisrael, koyach myself, the power of what he did. Lazeis lahem, to give them nachlas, an inheritance, goyim of other worlds, of other nations. And Rashi is mamshech. Rashi continues, and he says that if a goy is going to come to a Yid and say, listim atem, you ganovim, you thieves, you took away Eretz Yisrael from whoever it is, so the Yidden will tell him, Kol ha'aretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the whole world belongs to Hashem Yisbarach, right? Like it says, Lashem ha'aretzim loya. When do we say Lashem ha'aretzim loya? Does anybody happen to know? Besides when you write in a new book. Every Sunday. That's very good. Every Sunday, L'David Mizmer Lashem ha'aretzim loya. Every Sunday you say Lashem ha'aretzim loya. Why Sunday, Taka? Because Sunday the Eibishter created the world. So you say Lashem ha'aretzim loya. It's spread. This is Mishnah. It's a Mishnah in Mesachas Tamid. But whatever the case is, the world is the Eibishter's. So we say to the guy, Kol ha'aretz, the whole world belongs to Hashem Yisbarach. B'tzaynai nasna lachem, by his choice he gave it to you. U'b'tzaynai not lamikem v'nasna lanu, and by his will he took it from you and gave it to us. And that's why Atzein HaKadosh is ours and nobody else's. That's what Rashi says. But I want to bring out a different point. It's not a chas v'shalom steal it to Rashi says. I want to bring out a different point. Let me just repeat the question one more time. Why would the Torah write something that by the Torah's own acknowledgement is called hedyet? It's plain. If the creation and the psukim that describe it, and so to speak, like I said before, the formula, the secret behind creation, as holy and powerful as it is hedyet, is plain, is prost, relative to the rest of the Torah. Why is it in the Torah? Why is it in the Sefer Torah? Why is it in the Chumash? Why do we learn it? Why do we say it? And why does it have the halachas of הקודש Torah and so on? If the word in the Torah missing, it doesn't make a difference if it's bereishis or it's anochi. The Sefer Torah is just as possible, right? Why is it a part of Torah? And the answer that I'm giving, and I'm sure, like I said, there's scores of answers, is precisely because it's hedyet. Why is Asara Mamoros in the Torah? Because it's hedyet, because it's ordinary. What does that mean? What does that mean? The question is, it doesn't belong in the Torah because it's ordinary, and the answer is in the Torah precisely because it's ordinary. What's the answer? The answer is this. One of the Yesodei Hadas, one of the most critical principles of our Emunah, and like I said, this comes up all the time, and in Megasei Bechazrim, this we must review again and again and again, is the concept of Achdas Hashem, the oneness of Hashem. And the oneness of Hashem does not mean that Hashem lives in the Kodesh HaKadoshim and over there He's one. The oneness of Hashem means La Hashem ha'aretz umloya teva v'yeshiva, that everything is the Eibishter's. Everything is the Eibishter's, including such a thing that Torah calls a hedyot. Let's give an analogy. Imagine a melech basav adam, a king of the flesh, and he has a palace. A palace has all kinds of different demarked areas of space and room. Yeah? There are bedrooms, there are social areas, there's a kitchen, there's a dining room, and lahavdil, there's a place for waste. It's all part of a palace, right? A palace would be incomplete if it didn't have a place for waste. But everybody would agree that the king doesn't spend time worrying about how the garbage bins are arranged out and behind in the back of the palace. He leaves that to somebody else, whom the king doesn't even know, because the king relates to that person through 7 or 8 different intermediaries. That's the taich. The kings are not involved in narishkeit, in stupidity, in peripheral things, in external things, in divrei choil, in weekday ordinary things. Kings are involved in yonei chochma, in decisions that govern the whole land, talazachen. Yeah? And sometimes we make the mistake. And when I say we, first of all, I don't necessarily mean we. But on the other hand, I do necessarily mean we, because we don't realize how subtle emunah becomes. And we make the mistake of saying, Hashem is involved in the big stuff. The little things, especially such things that are the equivalent in the framework of Hashem and creation as lahavdil, a garbage dump. And the Taka says in the Zohar, the kings don't bother with external things. And it is precisely for this reason that Torah includes it. Because the Eibishter, even though we say Malchus Da'ara came Malchus Da'Rekir, that there's a similarity between a physical king and lahavdil, the Malchus Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is different than a Melech Basav Adam. A king of the flesh is Taka not involved in divrei hedyot, in things that are ordinary. And Hashem is. And Hashem Davke includes even the divrei hedyot, even the simple and ordinary things. He doesn't just describe the creation of man, He describes the creation of animals and plants and minerals. Why? That we should know that La Hashem ha'aretz umloya includes even divrei hedyot. We shouldn't make that terrible mistake of what's lashon in the Shas, the Chazal, is that there's shtei reshuyos. There are things that are holy, and those gehetz the Meibishter, that's the Eibishter's domain. And there are things that Kvayachal the Eibishter couldn't be bothered with, because if Hashem wouldn't be bothered with something, you know what would happen? Es volt nish gewen. It wouldn't be. Because Hashem creates not just the important stuff, but the unimportant stuff, the trivial stuff, the metaphysical equivalent of the garbage. Hashem creates that, and He's involved in that. And taka b'chol rega v'rega, every second. And if He wouldn't be, it wouldn't be. Because besides for Hashem, there's nothing. And everything exists only by His word. B'dvar havai shamayim nasu. And it says in Chassidus that Hashem didn't create the world in past tense. He's creating the world every second. And if He stops to create for an instant, it's the name of the Baal Shem Tov, it's nisht. The Telt, somebody came to Ayid and says to him, well, how would Hashem destroy the world? If He make a big fire of a brennen. And if Hashem wanted to destroy the world, He would stop creating it, and it would stop being. You don't have to destroy it, that's nish verbrennen, you don't need any fires. Because the fact that it is extraordinary, is a koyach eliki. Hashem removes His dvar Hashem, is kein Welt nish verbrennen, it isn't. And the Torah wants us to know that. We should know and understand that Hashem is not like a Melech Basav Adam. It's taka true that kings are not involved in Milad Hadyata, in simple things. But Hashem, if He were not involved in Milad Hadyata, the Milad Hadyata wouldn't be. And the Torah makes a point of speaking about what, from Hashem's point of view, are trivial things. To underscore, to emphasize that all of this is Hashem's, and it serves Hashem's purpose. Okay, and let me say it in under the day, in other words, it's the same point. What does it say in Tilim, in the Hallel, which we said not so long ago? The Goyim say, Ram al kol Goyim Hashem al Hashamayim kavedeh. Hashem is great. Hashem is awesome. He's so great, He's so awesome. Does He really care about what's happening in my house? Al Hashamayim kavedeh. His heaven, His glory is in the heaven. Now, so when you don't think too much, the goy is beautifying Hashem. He's saying God is so great. He's busy with important things. But it's heipach ha'achdos. It's the opposite of our emunah. Because if Ramach Roim Hashem alakmaim kavede is keinod, it's nishtad. There's no world. Hashem must be involved. And what's the Yid's retort? What does the Yid respond in effect? Hamagbi lo shaves hamashpil liris b'shamayim varet. To him it's all the same. Don't think the heaven is any more important than the earth. And don't think that the earth is any less important than the heavens. Hashem Yisbarach is involved in everything that is, in a very intimate, a very involved way. Because he's taka a king, but he's not like a melech boss of Adam, like a king of the ordinary, of the flesh, that lavorch the malkei, they don't worry about the trivial things. Because if Hashem wouldn't worry about the trivial things, they wouldn't be. And this is, so to speak, a lesson in emunah that the Eibishter is teaching us by putting what he himself called Hedyot into the Torah to say, I'm involved in everything. I'm involved in everywhere. And the lesson from this, in terms of our serving Hashem Yisbarach, it's clear and obvious. The first lesson is the lesson of Hashgacha Pratis, which is a lesson that we repeat all the time. And what's the lesson of Hashgacha Pratis? The lesson of Hashgacha Pratis really is that when we don't understand what the Eibishter is doing, we should know he's in charge and he's in control and he knows what he's doing. We don't understand. What's called Chayzer HaMaseh. We just don't understand, or we can't understand, whatever the particulars are. But Hashem is involved in every particular of the creation. And if he wouldn't be involved in every particular of the creation, as Hedyot, as ordinary as it was, what would be? It would not exist. Because Hashem, B'dvar Hashem, the word of the Eibishter literally sustain. They give life, they give existence to all that is. So as simple, as trivial as it is, Hashem is involved directly. So when things occur in our lives that we have a difficulty understanding, we need to remind ourselves that Eibishter is Taka Melech, and Malachim are not involved in Divrei Hedyot, but the Eibishter is Melech Malchei HaMelachim. He's so great that Hamashpili, he can even be involved in trivialities, in chitzenistic things, in external things, in simple things. He says, so that's the first lesson. And the second lesson is to appreciate the significance of our life and what we do. We shouldn't make the mistake of saying there's so many people. And lahavdil avdil says so many Yidden. And who am I? I'm a prasta person. How important are my deeds or my misdeeds or whatever it is? Darf man wissen, the Eibishter is so great that there's room for Hedyot also. Hashem is great enough to pay close attention to simple things as well. In other words, when a person is great, he can be involved in great things. When a person is even greater, his greatness tolerates even trivialities. And that's the truth. And lahavdil, by Hashem, it's of course on an absolute level. Hashem's involvement is in every detail. Hashem cares about what we do. And Mishibis that we can't understand, he gets nachas ruach when we do what we're supposed to, and he gets k'vayachal agmas nefesh. Hashem is upset, is unhappy. However we understand it or don't understand it, when we do things that we mustn't, because we have to appreciate that even though he's melech malchei hamlachim, he's involved in Hedyot as well. And the final lesson, and this is a lesson which is grand, perhaps it's beyond our reality, if you will, but it's also the truth. A Yid has to know, like it says in Chumash, what Hashem told Adam Rishon, Hashem created a world for what purpose? To fill it up and to conquer it. A Yid lives in Borough Park and he thinks to himself, there's a große Welt, und ich bin ein kleiner Mensch. There's a big world and I'm a little person, or there's a big world and I'm a small kehillah. So it says in Chazal that Echad Haya Avram, it's a pasuk. Avram was one man against the whole world. And it says in Medrash that Avram Avinu was called an Ivri. I once told this to you. What's such an Ivri? Ivri means he's a foreigner. Wherever Avram was, he was called an Ivri. When he came from Choron to Eretz Yisrael, he was called an Ivri. When he went from Eretz Yisrael to Mitzrayim, weiter called an Ivri. A Yid is always an alien, right? We're always foreigners. But the Medrash says that the Taich Avram Ivri is Kol ha'olam kulu mitzad me'ever echad, and Avram me'ever echad. The whole world was me'ever echad on one side, and Avram was me'ever echad. Avram was on the opposite side. So Avram ran into a cocoon and he wrapped himself in silk and Avram went to be mefarsim, to disseminate the emunah of Achdus Hashem and the idea of chesed that Avram Avinu created it and inspired it to the whole world. And instead of the whole world having an influence on Avram, Where Avraham separated himself from the whole world, Avraham changed the whole world. Now you're looking at me and saying, what do you mean Avraham changed the whole world? There's so many goyim. But goyim believe in Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. In the time of Avraham Avinu, the Rebbe once said by Verbringen, B'shas mein Seide hat mefarsim given Achtas Hashem, hat dein Seide gegessen Menschen. Understand Yiddish? When my Seide, when my grandfather was going around disseminating the belief in one God, your grandfather was eating other human beings. Avraham Avinu influenced the whole world. Today, the belief in Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, where does that idea come from? It comes from Avraham Avinu, from the Torah, and it's goyim all over the world believe in Havaya Elokeinu Havaya Echad. So Avraham Avinu wasn't afraid of the fact that he was one against the whole world, and he changed the whole world. It took him a while. It changed the whole world. Now you and I, not Avraham Avinu, we're little Avrahams, little Saras, but each one of us need to understand and know that a Yid has a special koyach. A koyach not only to appreciate that what he does or she does, you consider it hedyet, and maybe it is hedyet, but Hashem is great enough to be concerned with your divrei hedyet also. And when you do what He wants, to give manachas ruach. And the opposite is also true. In addition, a Yid has a koyach to know that when he says the whole purpose of a Yid is to be oir, to shine light. First himself and his family or her family, and then every other Yid, and lahavdil the whole world. And that's the Torah is telling us. You should know this: the world is the Eibishter's world, and the world is the Eibishter's world. Says in the Torah. So the Torah gives a Yid a koyach to be a balabos over the whole world. Like I said, this last point is a powerful point. It's a point that almost intimidates us. It scares us, but it's the truth. The world belongs to the Eibishter, and the Eibishter and his world belong to the Torah, are for the purpose of the Torah. But in any event, just to complete one more time, if somebody needs to know what did we talk about today, the answer is to know that Hashem is so great that He's involved in little things also. And as a result, first of all, when things don't make sense, remember, He's holding a held cup. He knows exactly what He's doing. And with betachan and amunah, we can overcome all kinds of challenges. And second of all, we need to appreciate that we may not consider ourselves important, but the Eibishter does. And what we do matters, and it makes a difference. And finally, we have to know that you don't have to be afraid of the world, because it's the Eibishter's. And of course, ultimately you have to change the whole world. And to bring Mashiach Tzidkenu. Okay, like we always do, it's Wednesday, that was on a good Shabbos. Shabbos bereishis, and we'll see you with Hashem next week. Okay.